My name is Bob. I'm a newbie who just started working this spring. My baby face is a concern. I get carded when buying alcohol, and at work, I'm treated like a mascot and still seen as a kid. I believe the only way to change this situation is to achieve results at work, so I've been working hard, staying late every day. This small company of about 10 employees was founded by the president, who worked tirelessly to build it up, mainly focusing on internet sales. That day, like usual, I worked until the last train and hurried to the station. The bustling downtown area gets brighter and more crowded as the night goes on. There are lots of men and women you wouldn't normally see. There are guys who look like nightclub hosts trying to attract customers, and women in flashy, revealing clothes walking quickly. I'm not comfortable with this atmosphere. It feels so alien and even scary to me. I just want to get through it quickly. As I'm running at full speed, I hear a voice say, "Ouch, I had bumped into someone. Sorry, I was in a hurry." I apologize and see that it's a group of tough-looking guys. This is bad. I instantly felt that. The guys were smirking at me. "I'm really sorry. Excuse me." "Hey, wait up, man. You think that's the end of it?" As I try to walk away, one grabs me by the collar. "Own it, what a mess. I'm done for." I got punched. They kept hitting me as if they were in a really bad mood. It hurts. Pain shoots through my body. But after a while, either my brain numbed or I stopped feeling the pain. "Police, over here, they're fighting." A girl's voice sounded from afar. The tough guys panicked at the sound and scattered in all directions like baby spiders. It's finally over. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. As I staggered to my feet, the girl offered her hand. "There's a park right there. Sit on a bench. I'll go buy some antiseptic." With that, she ran off. Lying on the park bench with my eyes closed, she returned with a bag. "Use this." She handed me a wet handkerchief, antiseptic, and band-aids. Even in the dim park, her bright blonde hair and torn, distressed shorts stood out, giving her a bit of a tough look. "I'm sorry for making you buy all this. I'll pay you." "No, it's fine for now. Take care of your wounds first." Okay." I wiped my bloodied mouth with the handkerchief. Lucky they ran off when I shouted police. I didn't actually call them though. If I did, they might have hit you more. She laughed. I usually ignore fights, but I couldn't stand seeing high school kids getting beaten. It's dangerous for you to walk around at this hour. I was surprised. Wait, she thinks I'm underage. No, I'm not a kid. Just coming back from work. Really? How old are you? 22. What? Older than me? Well, I helped for nothing. She burst out laughing. Not at all. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. What about you, walking alone at this time? You're not running away from home, right? No way, I'd never run away. She said, laughing. Lisa Brown was her name, a cheerful girl who laughs a lot. She looked a bit rough around the edges but was fun to be with. We ended up talking in the park for a long time and even exchanged contacts. I missed the last train and had to walk home, but talking to ease the shock and pain of being beaten. Since the next day, my routine was the same, work and catching the late train home. But one thing had changed. I started exchanging texts with Lisa. My dad, he's so arrogant and annoying. He might be important at work, but I can't respect him. He's never home. Lisa would sometimes complain like that. Your dad's busy with work, huh? Yeah, he's a president. Really? I replied, then suddenly thought. Wait, the president of my company. His name is Brown too. Could it be? With that thought, I casually asked. Your dad's company. What is it? I texted her the name of the company where I work. Yay, that's right. Wait, how do you know? I couldn't believe it. I was shocked by her response. I never imagined Lisa was the daughter of my company's president. When I mentioned it, surprisingly, Lisa seemed pleased. Later, I was called in by the president, and President Brown said with a smile, "Don't be nervous, take a seat. I hear you're close with my daughter, Lisa." I had been worried about getting in trouble, but his cheerful manner suggested otherwise. In fact, Mr. Brown seemed happy. "Lisa doesn't have many friends because of her personality. Please keep being good friends with her." I was relieved, though a bit taken aback. I had been worried about accusations of seducing his daughter, but that was needless. Afterward, perhaps because her father approved, Lisa started contacting me more. "Bob, let's hang out. How about karaoke? Do you know what's trendy? I've been curious about the cake buffet at that store. Let's go together. Our goal is to eat 10 pieces each." Because of Mr. Brown's approval, I could go out with her during lunch and return a bit late without worry, and if she invited me for dinner, I could leave work early without any issue. It seems Mr. Brown was right about her having few friends. She often called me out to different places to eat or hang out. She might be self-centered, but not a bad person. She looks a bit rough, though. It was fun to hang out with her, but there were problems. She called me out so frequently. I could hardly work. Tasks I planned to complete with overtime just piled up. But since it was president approved, even my boss couldn't reprimand me. My boss and colleagues just made bitter faces, silently letting me go when she called. Honestly, it wasn't a happy situation. I couldn't work properly, and I was teased as the future president just for seeing the president's daughter. I didn't want the president's seat. I wanted to work hard and achieve results first. I disliked being talked about like that. "Bob, let's go to a movie. The one I wanted to see has started." Lisa invited me as usual. I usually accepted, but this time I declined. There was an important meeting the next day. "Sorry, but I need to prepare for tomorrow's meeting tonight." "Oh, I see. Okay, let's hang out another time." Lisa backed off easily. I didn't need to accept reluctantly. Feeling relieved, I could finally focus on work. That's it. I can just sane it for a while. I declined her invitations the next day and the day after, citing work. When I started on the accumulated work, I was alarmed by how much there was. I need to hurry. Before I knew it, I had declined her invitations for a week straight. Then, the following week, Mr. Brown suddenly called me in. "Bob, it seems you're avoiding my daughter. Your attitude is too blatant. Quite a terrible thing to do." Well, it's fine. From tomorrow, you'll work in the warehouse, so you don't need to come to this main office." What? I was caught off guard by the sudden news. I remembered what the office lady had said before. When the company wants to let an employee go, they make conditions tough so they'll quit on their own. And there were rumors that the warehouse was exactly that kind of place. Why? Why is this happening all of a sudden? Come to think of it, I hadn't heard from Lisa since I started turning down her invitations. I didn't pay attention to it because I was busy with work, but if you don't want to hang out, I don't need it. Is that what you mean? Probably, she told her father to send me to the warehouse. When I realized that, anger welled up inside me. What a selfish way to behave. Mixing business with personal issues, no less. But then, I started to think that working in this warehouse might actually be better than those days when I couldn't focus on work because of Lisa. I decided to make the best of my new job. Maybe a few weeks passed. I was working comfortably. The shipping and management tasks in the warehouse Finding ways to improve and increase efficiency, I found a certain satisfaction in these. No matter the situation, changing my perspective helped me find motivation in my work. It's all about attitude. Then, one day, I received a text from Lisa for the first in a long time. She didn't contact me since I had declined her movie invitation, and I didn't contact her either. What could she possibly want now? Thinking this, I opened the text and was speechless. "Help me." That was all Lisa's text said. What does she mean? Thinking it was some kind of prank, I simply replied, "What's wrong?" But even after 1-2 hours, there was no reply from her. Maybe I'll try calling her during lunch break. Just as I was thinking this, Mr. Brown suddenly came into the office. "Bob, are you here?" "Mr. Brown, what's going on?" "Bob, help Lisa." Mr. Brown looked pale as he handed me his smartphone. There was an email on the screen with an attached image. "Lisa, she's been kidnapped." She looked like she was about to cry, but there seemed to be no injuries. The text read, "We'll contact again." What's this about? Lisa apparently left home after a heated argument with her father, Mr. Brown. It seems the argument started over my being transferred to warehouse duties. The heated exchange led Lisa to storm out of the house. A few hours later, Mr. Brown received a text. "I've been told not to call the cops. It might be wrong to ask you, but please help Lisa. I'm begging you." Mr. Brown, with tears in his eyes, begged me. The text from Lisa read, "Help me. It wasn't a prank, then. Things have gotten serious." I rushed out of the office. I tried replying to Lisa. "I'm coming to help. Where are you?" A few minutes later, I got a reply. "The red abandoned building in the downtown area." I forwarded the text to Mr. Brown and ran to the location. I recognized the place immediately. I always passed that building on my way to the main office. "Lisa." I burst through the door. Inside, several rough-looking men and Lisa, seated on a chair, were present. The men approached with angry faces. "What do you want? You looking for trouble, huh?" I had rushed in without any weapon. I had no plan of action. "This is bad. I'm going to get beaten up." The men approached menacingly, and I felt fear. I wanted to run. But if I ran, Lisa would be left behind. A desperate situation. Just as I closed my eyes, accepting my fate, I heard police sirens outside. The sound stopped right in front of the building. To our surprise, police officers burst in. "Freeze! Give up!" The men were quickly subdued. Lisa and I were rescued in no time. The police are incredible. It was Mr. Brown who called the police. My forwarded text helped him inform the police of the exact location. Mr. Brown tearfully embraced Lisa. Then, he deeply apologized to me. The next day, it was revealed that the whole incident was a staged kidnapping by Lisa. What the heck? Lisa wanted to trouble Mr. Brown for sending me to the warehouse. I thought it was because I kept refusing your invitations that Lisa told Mr. Brown to punish me. No way. I didn't say anything to Dad. I just told him we hadn't met recently because you were busy, and he misunderstood it. He got mad thinking it was wrong to avoid his daughter, resulting in the warehouse transfer. I didn't know about it and argued with him over such a cruel act. Sorry. I just wanted to teach Dad a little lesson. It seems Lisa was inwardly panicking as her father, not I, was supposed to come to the scene. On reflection, it was odd that she could text while being kidnapped. I couldn't think that far at the time. But well, since Dad begged you, Bob, with tears, I'll forgive him. Lisa casually brushed off the incident, but I couldn't help thinking it was a serious matter, relieved that it wasn't a real kidnapping. Lisa had to explain everything to the police and apparently got a good warning. Mr. Brown also offered a formal apology. He admitted to acting childishly out of love for his daughter and for his selfish misunderstanding, deeply apologized. He even suggested I return to my original department, but I declined. I was starting to find the warehouse work interesting and was happy about the transfer. Lisa apologized for repeatedly inviting me without considering my circumstances. It's okay to say no when you can't. I'd be happy if you'd hang out with me again, though, she said modestly. Of course, that was okay. I had fun when we hung out. Actually, Bob, I have something to discuss with you. What is it? Would you consider becoming the next president and, eventually, Lisa's husband? What? Hey, what are you saying? Lisa blushed and got angry at her father's sudden proposal. I smiled and said, I'll pass on becoming the next president. I'm not cut out for that, but I'd like to start as friends with Lisa, just as equals, not as the president's daughter or your employee. That would make me happy. Both Lisa and Mr. Brown laughed and said, we'd appreciate that. Thus, my eventful saga came to a close, marking the beginning of a new chapter. Tomorrow looks to be a busy day. Both my professional and personal life seem promising. Someday, I want to confidently see Mr. Brown. By then, I might even be regarded as more mature by those around me. I returned home early this morning, turning on the lights in my dark, empty room. Phew, I'm beat. I flopped down on the couch. Grabbing the remote from the table, I turned on the TV. I checked the weather forecast on the morning news. It's getting pretty chilly. Winter is almost here. Time flies so fast. As I thought about this, I lit up a cigarette I bought at the convenience store earlier and took a pre-sleep smoke. Every morning, it's the same routine. It's been like this for 5 years now. My name is James. I've never gotten used to living alone in this empty house, nor to the feeling of loneliness. I never imagined my life would turn out like this. It's all a result of my own actions. Sigh. I was supposed to have a brighter future. In the silent room, I found myself sighing and reminiscing about the past. I met my wife when I broke my leg and was hospitalized. She was a nurse at the hospital where I was staying, and I, with a broken leg, struggled to get used to a wheelchair and crutches during my painful rehabilitation. I feared I might never walk again. I felt anxious and worried. It was then that she started talking to me and treated me kindly, seeming like an angel. Talking to her, with her cute smile, made me feel really happy. Hey, after I get discharged, would you like to go out for dinner with me? I asked her almost every day. She turned me down many times, but finally, she gave in and handed me a note with her contact information. Yes, finally, I've got a date. The night before our first date, I was so excited that I had trouble falling asleep. On our first date, I was completely captivated by her. I had only ever seen her in scrubs before, but she wore a white floral dress and stylish accessories. After asking her out to eat several times, I confessed my feelings and asked her to be my girlfriend. I was over the moon when she said yes. Eventually, as our relationship progressed, we started considering marriage. You know, I'd like you to meet my parents soon, she said, her face turning red. I want to introduce you to my parents too. Let's plan to visit each other's parents next weekend. Okay, thank you. A few days later, while I was at work, she called me. Hello, what's up? I have something to tell you. Hey, I'm at work. What's going on? Sorry, but I just couldn't wait to tell you. She sounded really happy. What is it? Today, while I was at work, I felt nauseous and my stomach and back hurt. So I was allowed to leave work early and went to the obstetrician. And lo and behold, I have a baby. Really? I shouted out loud in surprise. I left work early that day, bought her favorite cakes, and as soon as I got home, I hugged her tightly. She had a smile filled with joy. She was 3 months pregnant. "We're so lucky to be blessed with a baby so soon," I said. Indeed, when we told our parents about our shotgun wedding, I was afraid they'd oppose it, but both families were actually thrilled. So, we get married, and my wife safely delivered a healthy baby girl. I felt truly happy from the bottom of my heart, looking at our adorable child. After spending a month staying at her parents' home, my wife returned home with our daughter. She was busy with the unfamiliar tasks of childcare every day. Taking care of a newborn was harder than expected, especially with the baby's night crying, which really wore my wife out. The baby cried every few hours, leaving no time for sleep. I wanted to help my exhausted wife, but my job in sales meant I couldn't avoid working late and socializing. Our company's performance was declining, and we in the sales department were desperate to bring in business. The CEO began to say in the morning meeting every day that the business was struggling. Our quotas were increasing, and the employees' anxiety was growing. I had just had a child. A cut in my salary would be a big problem. I poured my soul into every sales call, working diligently. Then, one day, something happened. I arrived at the office a bit early, turned on my computer, and was about to start work when Mr. Smith, the CEO, called me. "Could you come to my office? I need to discuss something important with you." My supervisor glanced at me briefly. I had a bad feeling about it. The air in the office seemed to tense up for a moment. I straightened my back and knocked on his office door. "Sit down. You know our company's been struggling, right?" "Yes. The thing is, it's become difficult to keep the company going. I hate to say this, but you need to start thinking about your future." "What?" I felt like the blood drained from my body. "Does that mean layoffs?" As I struggled to believe what I was hearing, I was also driven by a need to do something, pleading with Mr. Smith. "Can't you reconsider? I've given my all until now. This is just, I can't accept it so suddenly. I understand the company's difficulties, but it's a problem for me too if you just spring this on me." As I said this, trembling, Mr. Smith looked into my eyes more sternly than before and started speaking. "I need you to understand. I wish I could keep you. It's with a heavy heart that I'm telling you this. You're still young. There are other places you can work." Mr. Smith said this and then looked away, downcast. True, our company's average age was high, and other employees had kids still in school, which would be costly. In comparison, my child had just been born. There weren't immediate hefty child care expenses. In the end, I accepted Mr. Smith's offer and left the company through early retirement. How should I tell my wife about this? She's already struggling with new parenting. When I explained the situation to her, she just said, "Can't be helped," and didn't say anything more. But, "Will you be able to find a new job soon?" That seemed to be her only concern. Actually, I had something on my mind. Someday I would like to save up money and open my own store. I had such a dream. I was able to retire from the company and also receive a small severance package. So, I thought I would use the money to open the small pub of my dreams. That's what I thought. When I told my wife, she just said, "I see," and seemed uninterested, saying, "Childcare is tough right now." Then, I began preparing to open the pub. First, I started working part-time at a local bar I had noticed before. I also enrolled in a culinary school to learn about managing a food business, keeping busy every day. I had no time for household chores. Gradually, my wife and I began to argue more, and soon, every conversation turned into a fight. The bright and kind woman my wife once was had disappeared, replaced by a completely different person, quick to anger. Then one day, it happened. My wife finally snapped, and we had an unprecedentedly huge fight. You don't have any intention to help with child rearing. It's like I'm raising our child alone. Quitting your job suddenly to chase a dream seems thoughtless to me, she said. My wife said something like that. I was quite selfish. My wife was an excellent nurse and would have advanced her career if we hadn't had our child. She wanted to return to work early, but couldn't because of the long waiting list for daycare. I didn't even help raise the kids, and I was the only one chasing my own dreams. Looking back, it was unfair. Back then, I couldn't understand her point of view and only argued back. One day, when I came home from work, I found a note from my wife about divorce on the table, and my wife and daughter's belongings gone. It was only then that I realized how selfish I had been. Holding the note, I cried in the now empty room where my wife and daughter used to be. But it was too late for regrets. Later, I went to my wife's parents' house, and after many discussions, we ultimately agreed on a divorce. Our daughter was young, so custody went to my wife. Alone, I threw myself into work to escape the loneliness. The room, now devoid of my wife's smile and my child's voice, was quiet and filled with emptiness. I finally understood the saying, "You don't know what you've got until it's gone." I do regret getting divorced. I hope that one day we can be a family of 3 again. With that hope, I continued working towards opening my pub. And then, 5 years later, I finally managed to open my pub. Initially, there were few customers, and I worried about whether I could keep going, but the manager from the bar where I used to work part-time visited often. He gave me various advice on the menu, pricing, and interior layout, gradually increasing my clientele. Now, the business is starting to pick up. Then, one day, as I was cleaning up after a day's work, a woman came into the bar. "Sorry, ma'am, we're closed for the day." As I said this and went out to the hall, I was shocked to see the woman standing there. It was my ex-wife, visiting the pub for the first time. "Sorry for dropping by so suddenly." "No, it's okay. Have a seat." I only saw her once every 3 months for a visit with our daughter, and we hadn't met recently because our daughter wasn't feeling well. Judging by my ex-wife's pale face, I could tell something was wrong. As I wondered, her phone rang. She then said, "Sorry, I have to go, but I'll come back another day," and ran out of the pub. What happened? Worried, I called her, but she didn't respond. A few days later, my ex-wife came to the bar again. I was concerned and immediately asked her what happened. "What was wrong the other day? I tried to contact you, but couldn't get through." I was worried. After a long silence, she finally spoke, and I was hit with shocking news. "The truth is, our daughter is hospitalized at a nearby hospital." What happened? "Our daughter, she has a kidney problem. When I came here last time, her condition suddenly worsened. She needs a transplant, but we can't find a donor. I failed the medical tests, so I can't donate to her, and I just don't know what to do anymore." My ex-wife was sobbing, her shoulders shaking. Apparently, my daughter's illness had progressed without many symptoms showing, and she was lonely and struggling with the unfamiliar hospital environment. My ex-wife asked me to come and cheer her up. The next day, I closed the pub and headed to the hospital where my daughter was staying. When I opened the door to the hospital room, there she was, my daughter, asleep. She looked a bit thinner. Holding my daughter's hand, I shared with my ex-wife what I had been thinking about since yesterday. Use my kidney. What? I haven't done anything fatherly for our daughter, just regret so far. I've been away, but I care about her as much as you do. It's a strange way to show it, but if I can be of help, I want to save her. I conveyed all my feelings to her. After a silence, she spoke with tears in her eyes. "I had no right to take her away from you. I was selfish back then, and I've always wanted to apologize. I'm truly, truly sorry." She apologized. "No, the selfish one was me. I'm sorry." Then we both reflected on our selfishness. Afterwards, I went through the tests immediately, and it was confirmed that there was no problem with me undergoing the surgery. The kidney transplant was a success. The recovery went well, and I was able to leave the hospital earlier than expected. On the day of my discharge, the three of us got into a taxi, and my daughter, her eyes sparkling, said, "Do I get to go home with Dad?" "Right. Shall we all live together from now on?" she suggested. "Really? I want that," my daughter answered excitedly. I made eye contact with her. An indescribable atmosphere filled the air. "All right, let's all live together then, huh?" When I said this, my daughter was so happy that she held my hand and said, "Yay." And so, after 5 years, we started living under the same roof again. Smiles returned to the once silent room, and we spent each day closely, as if making up for the time we were apart. I vowed never to lose sight of what's important again. To make them happy for the rest of my life. That was my promise. I'm Jason, and I'm turning 28 this year, working a 9-to-5 job. To many, it seems that I've had my fair share of hardships. My parents passed away from illness when I was just a kid. My dad passed first. I think my mom was so overwhelmed with grief that she fell. It felt as though she followed him. Lost without my parents, I was taken in by relatives. I don't remember being mistreated by them. I think they tried their best to care for me. But I never truly felt like I was a part of the family. My cousins were kind, but I always felt out of place. I've always wanted to move out and be independent. I've felt this way since middle school. While many suggested I go to college, I wanted to start working. My uncle respected my wishes. So, right after high school, I got a job and started living in the company's dorms. I work at a big corporation in my hometown. The person who hired me was the previous CEO. Now, his son has taken over as the CEO. The former CEO treated me like his son, and the current CEO treats me like a younger brother. I've faced many challenges, but now, with supportive colleagues, I live a peaceful life. But recently, there's been a change in my life. A new supervisor joined the company in April. He's from a top university and always flaunts his education. I became his main target. At first, this new supervisor was polite to me, but during his welcome party, upon discovering I only had a high school diploma, he changed his attitude completely. I realized then what it means to see someone's true colors. From that day on, every day has been hell. He started calling me high school grad. I just wanted him to call me by my name, but he just laughed it off. Complaining to higher-ups was futile since the vice president had specially recruited him, and there was no one to reprimand him. My colleagues felt sorry for me but were too hesitant to go against the boss. I distanced myself from everyone, so they wouldn't feel burdened. But I'm only human. Putting up with his attitude and sarcasm every day was, to be honest, hard. Today, from the morning, he kept calling out high school grad and reprimanded me non-stop for a mistake that wasn't mine. He obviously knows it wasn't my fault. If it was truly my mistake, a caution wouldn't have been enough. His lecture ended just before lunch. Probably he wrapped it up to eat. I was on the verge of losing it. To cool down, I'd often go to the backyard of the office. There's a seemingly random yet well-maintained flower bed there that calms me. Every time I'm upset, I sit by the flower bed and take deep breaths. This spot was secretly introduced to me by the previous CEO when I just joined the company. "Take deep breaths here to cope with life's challenges," he had said. But today, I was so irritated. I almost forgot his advice. I'd never do something like this, but today, the peaceful flowers swaying in the wind angered me. In a fit of rage, I kicked the flowers, and light purple petals scattered everywhere. Instead of feeling relieved, guilt weighed heavily on me. With a heavy heart, I let out a deep sigh. How terrible! Why would you do such a thing? Suddenly, a frail voice said that, and I turned to look behind me. There stood a girl in a black dress. She was pointing at the flowers I had scattered, her lips quivering. Her pale skin, which looked like it seldom saw sunlight, looked like a reminiscent of a doll. "Did those flowers do something to you?" she continued, and I was momentarily caught off guard. It seemed I had unintentionally been staring at her. Of course, what she said made sense, and it was clearly me who was in the wrong. But today, of all days, I just couldn't bring myself to admit my mistake. "Aren't you an outsider? Don't just barge into the company grounds," I snapped at her, showing my irritation. The girl flinched at my voice. Seeing her tremble slightly reminded me of the flowers I had kicked around, causing a twinge of guilt. "I'm sorry," she muttered, bowing her head. Her slightly silvery long hair shimmered as it caught the sunlight. "But you shouldn't have done that either. Did something sad happen to you?" As she said this and began approaching me, I unconsciously took a step back. A moment ago, she seemed so timid, but now she was boldly moving closer. "Next time, instead of taking it out on flowers, have this." She tried to push something into my mouth. Something hard was pressed against my lips. A candy with a minty flavor rolled into my mouth. As I stood there in surprise, she offered me a small can. Somehow compelled, I took it from her. The contents of the can rattled as I held it. "Please cheer up with this." With that, she turned on her heel and dashed towards the back gate. She must have seen the flower bed from somewhere and entered the premises. The glimpse of her pale skin, visible from beneath her dress when she turned, stayed on my mind throughout the afternoon's work. The small can in my pocket rattled. On that day which I had that mint candy shoved into my mouth, I happened to see her again on the way back home. She was on the opposite sidewalk, stopped by a man in a car, seemingly asking her something. It looked like he was asking for directions. Unaware or perhaps ignoring his intrusive closeness, she looked into her cell phone to provide guidance to him. From where I stood, I could clearly see the man's sly, unsettling grin, and it made my blood boil. I jumped over the guardrail to cross to the other side. And then, I positioned myself between her and the man. "Sorry, did I keep you waiting? Who is this guy?" I pretended to be her boyfriend as I asked her. She looked taken aback by my sudden appearance. The man clicked his tongue in annoyance. "What? Where do you want to go? I can explain." With a friendly smile directed at the man, he mumbled something like "I'm fine," and hurriedly got into his car. He drove away as if escaping. Watching his retreating car, I was pondering the situation when I felt light punches on my back. "Why did you lie? I can give directions too." She seemed to feel belittled, her face turning a deep shade of red in apparent anger. Her obliviousness to the danger she was in somewhat angered me. "You were about to be dragged off into some remote area by that guy. Did you see his face? That creepy way he laughed." As I said this, grabbing her slender wrist, she shot me a defiant look. "That man was a gentleman. Maybe you're just mistaken. By the way, my name is Catherine." Even elementary school kids these days are taught at school to ignore strangers if they talk to them. I don't know if she's some sheltered girl from somewhere, but I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how to explain things to her. As I was stumbling over my words, the girl who introduced herself as Catherine smirked, looking rather puffed up. She probably thought she had me beat in the argument. Seeing that expression on her face, I felt frustrated. "Fine, got it. I won't offer any more help from now on. There'll come a time when you'll realize I was right." With those parting words, I turned my back on Catherine. I left without looking back. That was the plan, at least. Suddenly, I heard the screech of a car coming to an abrupt stop behind me. A bad feeling crept over me, so I stopped and looked back. Sure enough, it was the same situation unfolding all over again. I instinctively dropped to my knees, holding my head in my hands. This time, it was a group of 3 young men. One of them was talking to Catherine, and while she was distracted, another snuck up behind her. The last one stayed in the car, seemingly waiting for the right moment to open the door. My gut told me this was seriously bad news. Catherine was cheerfully giving the guy directions. In an age where everyone uses GPS, I wish people would quickly realize how odd it is for someone to ask a pedestrian for directions. "Catherine, what are you doing? Come over here now." I yelled her name loudly. She looked over, startled, with a surprised look on her face. The men saw me and muttered something like, "She's got a boyfriend," before quickly getting in their car and driving off. By the time I got to Catherine, the car was long gone. She stood there with a blank face. How can someone who's lost drive off so quickly? She wondered aloud. All I could muster was a, "Who knows? If I let her go home alone now, she might really never make it back." More than anger or disbelief, I started to feel genuinely concerned. Where do you live? I'll walk you home." When I said that while scratching my head in frustration, Catherine puffed out her cheeks, replying, "I'm fine. I'm not a child. I can walk home by myself." Saying that, she turned her face away from me in a huff and began walking. Of course, I'm under no obligation to escort her. But if something were to happen to her and I saw her photo on the morning news, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Okay, I get it. I'm heading the same way, so just ignore me," I told her, following a short distance behind her. At first, she seemed wary of me trailing her, but after a while, she began initiating conversation. Still walking ahead, she asked, "What's your name, and how old are you?" I replied, but she just responded with a casual "I see." But I have noticed. I saw that her steps had become lighter, and she seemed happier as we walked. After walking side by side for a bit, Catherine suddenly stopped in front of an event bulletin board. There were posters advertising public events. One of them had caught her eye. She was looking at a poster for an event at the county botanical garden called Night at the Botanical Gardens. The nighttime garden would be illuminated and feature pop-up outdoor libraries, markets, and bars. Visitors would be given lanterns with LED candles that glow. Catherine gazed at the poster with sparkling eyes. "Do you want to go?" I asked nonchalantly. She nodded slightly. Her profile looked a bit sad. "I've been told I shouldn't go out at night." She said that, while smiling as if she had gave up. Then she fascinated me with her own version of the nighttime botanical garden all the way to her house. The nighttime botanical garden she described sounded as magical as a fairy tale, utterly charming and delightful to hear about. I was so engulfed in her whimsical story until we were standing in front of her home's gate, where she turned around and said, "We're here," and smiled. "Thank you for walking me home," she said. With the same cheerfulness she showed during the day, Catherine gave a quick little bow. Her home had a grand entrance, so big that you couldn't see the front door from the gate. She truly seemed like a genuine young lady of high standing. "Do you want to go together to the nighttime botanical garden?" That just slipped out of my mouth. Catherine looked up at me, her face lighting up as if she was caught off guard. "If we sneak out, no one will know. It'll be fine." With a mischievous grin, I teased her, and Catherine laughed in response. We then made a promise by doing a pinky swear. We decided to go on the last day of the nighttime botanical garden. And just like that, we shared a secret between us. Meeting Catherine was like a breath of fresh air for me. The next morning, the manager was on my case again, but I noticed I wasn't as irritated as before. Whenever I thought of Catherine's face and the cool taste of mint, I felt calmer. No matter how calm I seemed, the manager grew more and more infuriated with me. In the end, he banged hard on my desk. As he walked away, I could hear him grumbling, "That high school graduate." It looked rather comical. From the recent office gossip, it seems that he doesn't like colleagues come to me for work advice instead of going to him. Well, I've been with this company since I graduated from high school. I'm what you'd call a veteran here. Probably they find me more reliable than the new manager. Bragging about educational backgrounds tends to fade among adults. I began to feel a little sorry for the manager who's still clinging to that. A few days later, right after work, I headed to my apartment, changed into casual wear, and went to pick up Catherine. It was that time when the sun is just about to set. I called out to her from below the window of her room she had pointed out to me, just beyond the fence. Almost immediately, as if she had been waiting, her window opened. Catherine, spotting me, flashed a smile as bright as a flower and waved. She first tossed a small bag to me from her balcony. After that, Catherine leaned out from her balcony and deftly jumped onto a nearby cherry tree. She then skillfully made her way down to the top of the fence. When I spread out my arms, she jumped in with a joyful look. She had absolute trust that I'd catch her. It made me happy to know that. Gently, I held her with both arms and softly set her down on the ground. "It's like I'm a princess," she said. She gave me an innocent smile, making me blush. With a teasing tone, I said, "Let's go." Catherine cheerfully replied, "Okay," and followed behind me. The nighttime botanical garden was quite eventful, especially since it was the last day. There's supposed to be a live jazz band playing tonight. Catherine's eyes sparkled as she looks around the lit-up garden. When I tried to light the way with a lantern, she insisted on holding it herself. With little Catherine illuminating our path, we slowly strolled through the garden together. When our legs grew tired, we borrowed a book from the outdoor library set up on the lawn, and under the lantern's light, we leaned in close to look at photo albums of botanical gardens from all over the world. We got thirsty, so I bought some sangria and we toasted. Munching on small square sandwiches, we chatted about various things. I think the alcohol made me a bit loose-lipped. I found myself sharing personal stories with her, stories I wouldn't usually tell. About how both my parents passed away one after the other, and how I then grew up in a relative's home. About how eager I was to be on my own, and how I pushed my boundaries with my uncle. Though I'd never shared this with anyone, somehow I could open up to Catherine. Well, it's a kind of story you hear everywhere. I concluded my personal tale with those words. Somewhere along the line, I felt embarrassed and couldn't look into Catherine's eyes. I was startled to notice silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She was crying silently, without making a sound. "What's wrong? Stomach hurting?" She shook her head in response to my hurried query. "I'm sorry. I know you wouldn't want pity, and it's rude for me to feel bad for you, but I can't stop crying." I realized I couldn't do anything but surrender to the moment. Regardless of how I might resist, it would be futile. I'm drawn to Catherine. She's so naive and pure, holding on to secrets unknown to me. I don't mind. I'm not at all bothered if you feel sorry for me, I sincerely said. From that day on, Catherine and I became much closer. My personal life was great, but at work, my supervisor continued to give me a hard time as always. Lately, he's been nitpicking, looking for any mistakes I might make. If he can't find one, he tries to pin someone else's mistakes on me. Whenever he does that, he'd always say, "You are fired." Of course, it's impossible for him to fire me just on his own whim. Even a child would know it's just an empty threat. If I had remained calm, if I had held back, things wouldn't have escalated. That day, the supervisor was more persistent than ever. He kept probing, asking why I didn't go to college and digging into my personal life. "So, after your parents passed away, you got shuffled around relatives' homes. The typical sob story. Your parents probably lacked the will to live. Losers, I guess." He must have read my background. When I remained silent, he continued to mock my parents and relatives. "If it weren't for the insurance money, they wouldn't have been able to do anything for you." I'd held back for so long, but this was the last straw. Before I realized it, my smirking supervisor was on the ground. Clutching his cheek, it seems I had struck him. "Hitting your boss. Typical behavior for a high school grad, like an undisciplined stray dog." That's when I realized. The supervisor was provoking me by insulting my parents, just to get a reaction out of me. I had fallen right into his trap. I was suspended and confined to my dorm room until they decided on further action. I don't regret what I did. I wish I could have counted with words, but my overwhelming anger pushed me to act. If it turned out that I was the only one getting suspended, I wish I'd made a bigger scene. That's my only regret. Today is the third day of my suspension. On a weekday afternoon, the bachelor dorm is eerily quiet. After being comforted with a "you made a mess" by the cafeteria lady while eating lunch, I returned to my room to find my window pane making a sharp noise. When I listened closely, I then heard an even louder thump. I quickly opened the window, and right below, I saw Catherine, about to throw a fist-sized rock at my window. "Hold on, hold on, hold on, that's crazy." I was more amused than shocked. She said she had been throwing increasingly larger rocks because I didn't notice the smaller ones. "I heard you got suspended, and I got worried." Why? Who told you? How did Catherine know about my suspension?" Catherine just said, "It's a secret," and smiled. Afterwards, I was able to return to work, but I couldn't get back to my original department. I was moved to a position with nothing but menial tasks, seemingly being edged towards quitting on my own. During this time, the CEO was on an extended business trip abroad, and all decisions were being made by the vice president, which wasn't ideal. The vice president was basically a puppet to the supervisor, easily manipulated. I was determined to stay, at least until the CEO returned. About 6 months after my transfer, something wonderful happened in my personal life. Catherine accepted my marriage proposal. I know it might seem too soon, but I wanted a family of my own. I couldn't imagine anyone but Catherine by my side. I just wanted to tell her that as soon as possible. "I want to give you something precious." This was her response to my proposal. She took off the locket pendant she always wore. She gently opened the intricately designed pendant top with her delicate fingers to show me its contents. Upon seeing what was inside, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Well, it held another one of Catherine's secrets." Look, it's my father. The secret evidence. The secret Catherine had been hiding for so long was now shared with me, and I couldn't contain the overwhelming love I felt for her. It's probably something she wouldn't want anyone to know. Inside, there was a picture of the former CEO who had treated me like his own son. From this, I could infer that Catherine had a complicated relationship with him, her father. Things moved quickly, and a wedding date was set. When I handed out invitations to my co-workers, everyone congratulated me. Of course, I also gave an invite to the supervisor. He accepted it with an arrogant demeanor and casually tossed it onto a pile of documents. From what I've heard, he's planning to attend, just to save face in front of the others. This news was a relief for me, because his attendance was a crucial part of a plan Catherine and I had plotted. If he didn't show up, our plan wouldn't kick off. I quietly looked forward to the surprise we had in store for the wedding day. On the day of the wedding, as expected, the supervisor's behavior was beyond rude. Even though he was scheduled to attend the church ceremony, he started drinking beer early on and got completely drunk. In that state, he stumbled into the bridal suite and, in his typical manner, began to loudly mock me. "Look at you, getting married so young even though you only finished high school. Did something happen? Did she get pregnant? Is she also just a high school graduate? I bet she's just another pretty face with no brains, right?" He loudly repeated such disgraceful remarks. I was desperate to calm down my cousin and uncle, who rushed over in anger. The supervisor, seeing this, only became more elated. He began to shift his insults and hurtful words from me to Catherine. "What do you see in a high school graduate? Oh, are you the one bringing home the bacon? Right, any girl will do if there's money involved," he said, peering into Catherine's face with a vulgar laugh. "The nerve you have is astounding. How dare you speak to my sister that way?" An unexpected voice thundered. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly with the sudden appearance of the CEO. The supervisor was dumbstruck, his mouth agape. Catherine looked up to the CEO and softly called him Big Brother. As it turns out, the CEO and Catherine are half-siblings. The CEO is the child of a previous marriage, while Catherine seems to be a child he had out of wedlock. The former CEO deeply loved Catherine's mother and reportedly neglected his own wife, who he had been in a somewhat arranged marriage with. That's likely the reason the siblings were not very close. "To act so rudely on my sister's big day, can't you see you're tarnishing your own reputation?" the CEO said. Next to the supervisor, who had turned a deep shade of pale, the vice president seemed to have lost all color as well. It was the supervisor he had personally recruited who was now causing the scandal. He likely realized that he bore some responsibility for this blunder. "It's a misunderstanding. I'm the victim here. He assaulted me. You shouldn't be blaming me," the supervisor exclaimed, his words becoming more and more erratic. The CEO, clearly infuriated, told him, "Go home and await disciplinary action." That voice sounded chillingly cold, as if it echoed from the depths of hell. And so, our modest revenge plan, by Catherine and me, came to an end. It was I who bridged the gap between the two who weren't on good terms. The moment the CEO returned to the country, Catherine and I went to report our marriage to him. I think I'll never forget the surprised look on his face at that time. I told the CEO, "Let's forget the grudges from our parents' time and build a new era together." He, who had always doted on me like a younger brother, probably never imagined I'd marry his half-sister, Catherine. "Jason, from now on, you're truly my brother. On behalf of our father, I ask you to take care of Catherine." The CEO deeply bowed, and Catherine hugged him, repeatedly saying thank you and I'm sorry. Finally able to share words she'd always kept inside, Catherine joyfully grabbed both my arm and the CEO's, smiling gleefully. A year passed since our wedding day. One day, Catherine approached me, clearly excited about something. It seemed like she was hiding something behind her back. "What are you hiding?" At my inquiry, Catherine unveiled a flyer with a playful ta-da. It was an advertisement for a nighttime botanical garden. "We're going again this year, right?" Catherine looked at me, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Of course, and next year, and the year after. Let's make it our tradition," I replied. Catherine nodded, her face full of happiness. I was stunned by a shocking truth and became dazed. Out of the blue, she blurted out to me, "I just can't be without you." Cutting me off, she looked straight into my eyes. Her gaze conveyed a strong determination. Her expression was pure seriousness. "My name is Kevin. I'm a 27-year-old graphic designer. Currently, I work for a major design company, handling various tasks like designing posters and book covers. Despite I graduated from a vocational college 3 years ago, I won a design contest with a poster which landed me a job at this company. Until then, I had been freelancing, but after showing off my award-winning design, I miraculously received a job offer. The poster I submitted in the contest had a mermaid theme and was titled Mermaid Princess. It depicted a deep-sea mermaid swimming up towards the surface. The design transitioned from dark to light colors, creating a feeling of hope, which was highly praised by the judges. I have a strong attachment to this Mermaid Princess work as it was a turning point in my life. A job at a major company allowed me to be involved in various projects and led to fulfilling days. However, I had one concern. It was my boss, Director Bob. "Kevin, the font color doesn't match the background. Redo this flyer's design." From my perspective, who have studied at a prestigious art college, navy is better than blue in this case. Saying so, Bob threw the flyer at me. Thinking here we go again with his nitpicking, I replied, "Got it," and immediately turned to my computer. Director Bob had graduated from a renowned art college, and thus held immense confidence in his taste and education. For that reason, he clearly didn't like the fact that I, a mere technical college grad, joined the same company midway. Just like now, he always nitpicked at my works, suggesting to change the color or switch the motif from flowers to stars, and demanding numerous revisions. Of course, as a designer, my goal is to produce better works. But the tricky thing with Bob was that he often changed his feedback. As expected, after I switched the font color from blue to navy and presented it, Bob ordered another revision. "You know what? Blue was better. No hard feelings, but artists go through many iterations to create masterpieces. This will be a great learning experience for you, as you have not properly studied at an art college." Saying so, Bob handed back the flyer with a sneer. Feeling the malice from Bob, I once again replied, "Understood," and ended up working overtime that day. With all the overtime work and the way I was being treated, I was starting to feel down. But I genuinely love my job as a graphic designer, and I also wished to become a designer who would someday earn Bob's respect. But man, I sure could use some emotional support. Late at night, after finally finishing up, I felt a pang of sadness while heading home on the last train. Looking back, when I was freelancing, I was always busy due to financial constraints. In such a situation, romance was out of the question, and since my college days, I had always been alone. But someday, I'd like to get married. I thought, maybe now is the time to take some action. However, as I was suddenly driven by that urge, I was still unsure how to proceed since I had been away from dating for so long. So, the next day, I decided to seek some advice from my cousin, whom I regard as my elder brother, John. When I called him, John suggested, "If you're up for it, I know a woman I'd like to introduce you to. She's a 26-year-old freelance illustrator and a friend of my wife." An illustrator? I'm intrigued. If she's okay with it, I'd definitely like to meet her. Thus, through John, I got a chance to meet this woman. We planned to have a matchmaking date at a cafe lounge in a week. The woman's name is Catherine. I got to see her picture on a phone, and she was a beautiful lady with long flowing black hair. Despite I'm not that good looking, I showed Catherine my picture through John, and thankfully, I seemed to be within her acceptable range. Now, all that was left was to meet in person. Nervously anticipating our meetup the next day, I received an unexpected call at work. Suddenly summoned by Director Bob, I wondered what was up. Entering his office, Bob, with a smirk, began. "Kevin, I've been thinking of transferring you. The official notice will be out in 2 weeks. Start preparing for your new location so you will be able to begin working in a month." "Wait, you are transferring me?" Caught completely off guard, I was taken aback. The branch office he referred to was also known as the dumping ground for sidelined employees, infamous for hardly getting any design work. Why would I, who can handle designs at the main office, suddenly be transferred to that branch? When I voiced my confusion, Director Bob, with his usual condescending attitude, continued. "Well, Kevin, you've been working more overtime than other employees, and frankly, your level aren't enough for the main office. If you're unhappy with that, maybe you should consider resigning on your own terms. After all, you used to freelance, and that might be a better fit for you." His words made his true intentions crystal clear. Bob's plan was to pressure me into resigning by forcing an undesirable transfer. For me, if I was to be transferred to a branch where hardly any work comes in, it would probably be best to leave the company. Feeling the unfairness in Bob's actions but knowing arguing would be futile, I simply responded, "Understood. I'll submit my resignation form," and quietly left his office. I had always put in effort, hoping for recognition from Bob. But all that effort went down the drain. Though I was filled with a deep sense of frustration, I had a meeting set up with Catherine the next day. It would be unthinkable to cancel the matchmaking date the day before after expressing my interest. I should apologize sincerely. With that thought, I headed to the cafe lounge in a suit the next day. Arriving about 10 minutes earlier, I nervously waited for Catherine. Then precisely on time, she appeared. Wearing an elegant gray dress and carrying herself gracefully, Catherine looked even more beautiful than in her photos. My heart began to race upon seeing her, but I had to tell her the truth. Although, before I could say anything, with a warm smile, Catherine started introducing herself. "Sorry to keep you waiting. My name's Catherine. I'm really looking for you. I'm so sorry. I have something I must apologize for today." Seeing me bow and apologize as soon as we met, Catherine was visibly taken aback. "The thing is, just yesterday, my boss ordered me to transfer to a branch office. The real purpose behind this is to push me to resign. So, in about a month, I'll be going back to freelancing. I'm truly not in a position to date anyone right now. I sincerely apologize for initiating this meetup only to bring you such news." Upon hearing the details, Catherine responded calmly. I had thought anyone would be rightfully angry if they heard such things during a matchmaking date, so her reaction was quite surprising to me. "Is that so? That must have been tough. Thank you for being honest with me." No, I'm so sorry." And so, we just had one cup of coffee and then went our separate ways. Honestly, I wanted to talk with her more and was curious about the type of illustrations she creates. But with my future job becoming uncertain, it might not be the right time for a relationship. I probably won't get another chance to meet such a wonderful woman like her. With such lingering feelings, I headed to the office the next day and was again summoned by Director Bob. Now what? I thought, noticing that Bob seemed different than usual. "Kevin, sorry to ask this, but could you hold off on submitting your resignation? We actually received a direct job request for you." Previously, unless it was something significant, Director Bob would allocate work considering each employee's capabilities. It was my first experience receiving a direct request. "From where?" I inquired, and the response was unexpected. "It's from Inspire Publisher. Who would have thought a major publisher like them would scout you directly? Inspire Publisher is a top-tier publisher. I never dreamed of receiving work from such a big name." According to Bob, a webcomic artist named Sarah Cherry was releasing a book with Inspire. For some reason, she specifically requested me to design the book cover. After reaching out to the publisher, I was informed that Sarah wanted to discuss the job in person, so the next day I visited the office for a meeting with Sarah. I had intended to submit my resignation, but this unexpected job offer felt unreal. First, I should check out Sarah's work for the design. So, I went online to look at her creations and was immediately captivated by her world. The gentle color palette of her illustrations was very endearing and soothing. But her work wasn't just cute. Sarah's drawings vividly conveyed everyday moments of wonder, making it understandable why she has so many fans. I wondered, what kind of person is Sarah? With anticipation for the next day, I headed to the publisher's office and was led to the meeting room. But the moment the door opened, I was shocked. It was Catherine, the woman I had just met for the matchmaking date. Caught off guard, I managed to say, "Could it be, are you Sarah Cherry?" With a smile, Catherine nodded. "Yes, I work as an illustrator under the name Sarah Cherry." I knew Catherine was an illustrator, but I had no idea she was Sarah Cherry. In astonishment, I slowly said, "But Catherine, are you sure I'm the right fit? I'm the only one in my company with a vocational school degree. There are many more skilled designers out there. I specifically want you." Cutting me off, Catherine looked at me straightly. Her expression was full of seriousness. She then shared, "Actually, I've been following your work for years. Ever since I saw your mermaid princess in the poster contest, I've been a fan. You've known my work. I'm honored." I couldn't believe that Catherine had recognized my work from 3 years ago. She continued, "3 years ago, I was in a slump, not producing much, but when I saw your mermaid princess, I was deeply inspired. The mermaid's desire to escape the dark sea and reach the shore where her prince awaited resonated with me. I felt that as long as I persisted like that mermaid, I would eventually see results. Your work inspired me to persevere." Catherine, realizing someone was touched by the emotions I poured into my work, was the greatest joy. It's not just about creating beautiful graphics. If my own creation had truly moved someone's feeling, there's no greater joy. Catherine's eyes filled up with tears as she continued, "That's why I was so thrilled when I heard about our matchmaking date. I've always wanted to meet you, Kevin. I've longed to have a conversation with the person behind such marvelous work. Meeting you through a mutual friend was like a dream come true. I can't believe a designer like you would be transferred to a regional office. That's why I directly reached out to offer this job." I can't express how grateful I am to Catherine. She gave me such an incredible opportunity. For my part, I'm ready to give my all for her. Thank you so much. I'm truly fortunate to work with you, Catherine. While I'm unsure about the future, as fellow creators, let's produce the best work possible. After our miraculous reunion, we had an in-depth discussion about the book's design. Since it's Catherine's first book, she's particularly attached to it, and I too felt a strong desire to meet her expectations. Interestingly, the content of her comic presented Catherine's journey to becoming a successful webcomic artist. When I asked Catherine about her preferred cover design, she responded, "Well, since the story is about dreams coming true and a happy ending, I think a bright cover would be suitable." Hearing this, an idea immediately struck me. "I'd like you to help with one particular aspect," I said, sharing my concept. Catherine agreed enthusiastically, saying, "That sounds great." Together, we co-designed the book cover. A year after meeting Catherine, the book I designed became a bestseller, selling over 200,000 copies within 6 months of its release. Thanks to Catherine's charming original characters, the book garnered popularity across various age groups and was highly praised for its readability. Moreover, our collaborative cover design was applauded for its excellent taste. For the book, I themed the cover around the Little Mermaid. But unlike before, she's not the mermaid from the dark, deep sea. This mermaid, having come ashore, gazes at the blue sky and the brightly shining white sand beach with a radiant smile, and the mermaid illustration was crafted by Catherine. Interestingly, the mermaid embodies Catherine herself, who overcame difficulties to realize her dreams. Thanks to her adorable art style, the design turned out even more appealing than expected. Moreover, representing the mermaid scales with holography was admired as being innovative by the publishers, and since then, I've been receiving direct job offers from Inspire Publisher. At this rate, as the director, there was no way they could transfer me to a rural branch office, so the idea of my transfer was cancelled. Surprisingly, this episode led Bob to reassess his previous attitude. "Kevin, I read the book you designed, and it was truly impressive. Not just a pretty cover, but it perfectly aligned with the world of the comic, creating an entire universe. I feel ashamed for previously emphasizing academic credentials so much." Perhaps it's his genuine passion for graphics that made him recognize and appreciate the effort I poured into the design. I've always been aware of his profound skills in art and design. "There's so much I've learned from you over the years. No matter what, you'll always be a designer I deeply respect." Upon hearing this, Bob, for the first time, showed a gentle expression. "Thank you, Kevin. Your words truly mean a lot to me." While I had reconciled with Bob, there's more good news. To everyone's surprise, with the book's publication, Catherine and I began dating. As we collaborated professionally, we came to recognize each other as irreplaceable in both work and personal life. We continue to inspire each other in our work and maintain our relationship. And now, 6 months later, Catherine is publishing another book, so we're teaming up once more for the cover design. What design should we go for this time? How about this? I quickly sketched a scene of a wedding ceremony featuring a bride and groom. Why the sudden shift from a mermaid to a wedding scene? Well, once the mermaid, fascinated by the sea, comes ashore, wouldn't she want to marry her prince? Catherine blushed and laughed. "You do realize that mermaid represents me, right?" "Yeah, so can I propose to be the prince? The mermaid who saved the drowning prince?" "Indeed, Catherine is my very own little mermaid."